All right, Scott, it's Black History Month, so you know what that means.
What does that mean?
I'm rooting for everybody black.
Let's get started. I'm Garrett McQueen,
I'm Scott Blankenship.
and this is Triloquy, true and real stories from the fringes of classical music. Welcome to Black History Month. A pleasure to explore some Black history conversations as we do every February. You ready?
The first in this series for Triloquy.
Yeah, and and you know what I'm most proud of, Scott, about what we have planned for this Black History Month is how, for lack of a better word, diverse the perspectives are.
Wide-ranging.
Yeah. So there's going to be, we're going to hear from folks from the world of jazz radio. There's an improviser, a percussion improviser coming in. There's a local composer who wrote an opera about Martin Luther King Jr.'s mother, who we're going to talk about. But kicking things off is a black artist and composer who I would sort of describe as a local celebrity, Miss PaviElle French.
She's a huge name in town.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And anytime that she is brought in, anytime you need a big woman's voice with some power, you call on PaviElle.
Yeah.
And, anytime that there's a big event where there's a lot of high-profile names in the Twin Cities, she's on it.
Yeah. What drew me to her originally, one of the first concerts I attended here in Saint Paul was when PaviElle wrote a piece of music in honor of her mother, the Requiem for Zula. And in the composition of that, there was a Minnesota Originals that came out, a local public television sort of special. I'll have a link to that in the description of this episode. But at that concert, what was incredible to me was seeing how colorful the audience looked. The audience hall, the audience in the hall looked a little different than audiences usually do. And I think that really speaks to the power of engaging community through music, the way PaviElle, celebrates her native rondo in everything she does. So, yeah, it's a real honor to kick off Black History Month by hearing from PaviElle. Listening back to the interview that we did, one of the big things that I noticed was how many people toward the beginning of our conversation that she's given a shout out to, all of these very important names in Black music and Black history that you don't always get to hear from. And it really makes sense of a question that I had planned on asking each of the guests for Black History Month, which is, what is wrong with Black History Month? We can talk for a long time about, in jest or otherwise, how it's the shortest month of the year, and that's Black History Month and all that sort of thing. But really, what I'm digging into, or what I hope that the guests will think about this month when I ask that question, is how curriculums and how education sort of cuts the conversation of Black history short, even during Black History Month. We all hear about Martin Luther King Jr. and some of these other names, but George Washington Carver comes to mind, but there are so many conversations that are just missing from the Black History Month curriculums. I mean, when you think back to your Black History Month days in Omaha,
we have to go that far back. No, I remember three names: Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey.
Oh,
that's the three that they hounded on.
And I'm actually a little surprised to hear that Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey made it into the mix. Two names that people don't hear about all the time.
Right. They tried to break it down. Martin Luther King Jr. was peaceful. Malcolm X by any means necessary. Marcus Garvey thought everybody should go back. All the Black people should go back to their roots in Africa.
Right. Well, while Black history, thinking decades back is definitely important. With the guests that we have planned for this month, I really had a more I don't know, a more contemporary take on Black history to explore because there are some, names from not decades ago that we don't explore all that much. And I'm gonna shamefully admit that before moving to Minnesota, I just didn't know that much about Prince.
Mm.
And he's obviously he's a big name here and a big name in the music industry. But thanks to my friend Pete, who was on an early Opus of Triloquy, shout out to Pete Collin. I went to Paisley Park and got a real in-depth look at not just his career, but the levels and the depth of his musicianship and how incredible he is. So, if it was up to me, I would make sure that folks like Prince were getting a little more attention, as one of those big names in music as he was, but also someone who really had a deep impact on communities here in Minnesota and a really lasting impact on the world. I like to think that even one day his music will become part of the canon, quote unquote,
Hmm.
when we talk about more pops, classical radio stuff. We'll put Beatles arrangements on and all that sort of thing. But Prince's music lends itself to really beautiful classical arrangements. I was on the internet not too long ago and found an ensemble. They're known as the String Space Quartet, and they have a really beautiful rendition of When Doves Cry that, I don't know, hopefully we can get that on the radio sometime.
Well, we're playing string arrangements of Beatles tunes and Paul
Yeah, that's what I
McCartney
said.
tunes,
Yeah.
so why not?
So why not? Are there names in the world of Black history that you think deserve more of a spotlight? Not just obviously across the board, but
Not just
especially in February.
musicians?
Yeah, not just your musicians, anyone.
Okay, well, because I was going to mention Ben Harper.
Okay, talk to me about Ben Harper.
Ben Harper records analog, and he is not only a great musician with an incredible voice, but his recordings have a warmth and a depth to it that you just don't find elsewhere. And I think that Gary Clark Jr. is just getting the spotlight, even though he's been around for a while and he's been paying those dues.
Yeah, I first heard about him watching the Grammys a couple weeks ago.
Well, I heard him on the Colbert Report, or not Colbert Report, but on the Late Show, whatever show he does now, and I thought that This Land Is Mine was sort of a continuation of This Is America, sort of more.
You're talking about the Donald Glover, This Is America.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry. I really think that Gary's is a little bit. It's biting in a different way.
Yeah, raw in a different way.
Raw in a different way. Yeah. So I don't know. Those are two names that I think that we should pay more attention to, and I'm sure that Gary Clark Jr. is going to be getting plenty of attention after that Grammy performance.
Paranoid and pissed off. Now that I got the money, 50 acres and a Model A, right in the middle of Trump country.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to spend some more time with Gary Clark Jr.'s music as well, because again, celebrating the diversity that is Black music and Black history. So, yeah. Well, before we jump into the conversation with PaviElle, I would like to shout out someone else who I think is definitely going to be in the Black history textbooks in years to come. Issa Rae, who is a television and movie producer. She, you can kind of look at her journey by taking a look at her YouTube channel, some of the early plays and, sort of shorts that she wrote in different series. So back at the 2017 Oscars, I believe, she was walking down the red carpet and, answering questions from the reporters like they do. And one of the reporters asked her. Do you have your eyes on anyone? Is there anyone that you're hoping to get the special win? And that's when she said,
I'm rooting for everybody black.
now, that phrase, I'm rooting for everybody black, has kind of become iconic in a way. It's definitely a very popular hashtag. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that hashtag at the top of my profile. And I actually got a T-shirt with that phrase on it. I'm rooting for everybody black, as a gift from someone. And I posted it on, I want to shout out Jessica Majunkin. I posted it on her Facebook page and sort of just in jest said, oh, wow, what if I wear this to the Sphinx competition? So if you don't know, Sphinx is an organization that promotes the work of Black and Latinx classical musicians. I posted that on her page, and someone from Sphinx asked me to take it down because I am, a face of Sphinx in many ways. And there were some members of the Latinx community that felt a little uncomfortable with that. So I did. But I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that, especially, as we enter Black History Month here on Triloquy. I don't think there's anything wrong with rooting for everybody black. And that doesn't mean that I'm not rooting for other folks and other communities. But as a black person, I shouldn't have to apologize for putting, my folks first.
Are you in control of any sort of an award or monies or anything like that?
None of those things. And I know that was the concern.
Now, if you were, I think that is totally legit.
Okay.
Their grief.
All right. I'll have to spend some more time thinking about that, because even if I was involved with somebody winning some money or something, I still should be able to affirm myself. And that, and that speaks to the issue of that phrase, people of color. You put so many people under this single umbrella when we all have different historical struggles and historical challenges or historical things that manifest as modern day challenges, and I don't know. I'm rooting for everybody black. And I'm sorry that some folks are kind of uncomfortable with that, but that's something I definitely want to affirm for Black history. And among those people, who I'm rooting for is PaviElle French, who we'll hear from right now. Miss PaviElle French, it is an honor to have you here on Triloquy. Thank you so much for coming in.
Glad to be here, y'all.
When we were, Scott, when we were developing Triloquy, really around this time last year, we were kind of thinking of guests who we thought it would be really fun to have in. And you were definitely among the very first people whose names came up. We wanted to make sure, we had all our stuff together before we had you in. So
appreciate y'all.
Yeah, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I know, Scott, you're a fan of Pavi.
I am. You remember all the way back to Little Blue World?
Yeah.
That song for the 50th anniversary of
Yes.
Minnesota Public Radio. And I'm listening to it and I'm going, okay, it's snappy and the lyrics are catchy. And then you come in and every hair on the back of my neck stood up when you started to sing. And then I got to introduce you at Bring the Sing outside at Como Pavilion in 15-degree weather.
That
and
was
I'm
so
up
much
on
fun.
stage trying to tell her how much, I appreciated her voice. And she's looking at me like, yeah, can we get this started? It's cold out here.
It was so cold.
Oh, yeah.
It was so cold. Like, I had a hot cup of tea, and it lasted about 2 minutes. Like, then it was, it was seriously lukewarm.
Yeah.
It was no joke. I thought, it was the craziest thing I've ever done as far as being a singer. Like, singing in that degree weather with my voice and with the instruments. It was just wow.
Yeah.
It was wow.
Yeah. And then, one of my early exposures to you was your collaboration with the Saint Paul Chamber Orchestra, how that changed not just what was happening on stage, but what was happening in the audience and what the audience looked like. And so we're going to hop into that here in a bit and hear more about your upbringing and your relationship with Saint Paul and the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
But something that I'm asking each of the guests for Black History Month on the Black History Triloquy Opuses is what is wrong with Black History Month. So in school, everyone learns the name Martin Luther King Jr. and some of those other folks. We know that George Washington Carver invented peanut butter and all of that. But are we really hitting the mark with Black History Month and the way we treat it and the way it's taught from your perspective?
No, I think it's exactly what you're speaking to, where there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Black people who have done so many things and made so many contributions in history to make everything the way it is today. And we're living on their legacy.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about them. Nobody's really speaking on them. And it tends to be the same reiterations of things over and over, reiterations of stories. And even in movies and all other points of art or anything that we do, it seems to be recycled. And we don't have to do that.
Right.
It's like we're not digging deep enough.
And not that those stories aren't important, but again, there are so many others, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, we know them. And, you know, it's like we are all to be celebrated. You know, you can't just, it's not just a few. Like, you know, it's always that thing where it could only be one, or, you know, and it just speaks to that same line of all that, you know, and it's like, no, there's so many contributions, so many things that we have done in this world that people don't even know about, that I don't even know about. And I love history and I'm into that. My mom was a teacher, you know, like I was a reader, but there's even so much more that I don't know that I still continuously learn and have to learn. And that's the same for everybody else. I would love to see people celebrate it and learn more about the depth of our culture and what we've contributed and what we've done,
right?
Especially as African Americans, you know.
And you know, this is the first time that we're behind the mics since the passing of Kobe Bryant, and you know what it makes me think of is celebrating the living, and not that someone goes irrelevant after they pass away, but we spend so much of our energy on people who are gone, and we kind of overlook people who are here. We don't give them their flowers while they're alive. And that's something else that I think is very important. You know, Scott, I was talking to you earlier about Gary Clark Jr., you know, this black blues singer that I had never heard of, you know, that hadn't made it into my circles, and a name that isn't in the Black history curriculums, you know, as it were.
I did play that for you, but something else must have been going on that it didn't stick with you. When This Land Is Mine, is that the title of it?
Yeah.
When that one came out, I heard it really early on the Colbert Report, and again, it was just one of those moments where I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop listening. It just drew me in.
So PaviElle, how about you talk to us a little bit about your upbringing? You know, when we talk about Black History Month and the things we overlooked, I'm sure there are all sorts of musicians and artists that you grew up around that, again, don't make the history books, but play a very important role in who you are now as an artist.
Oh, for sure. I grew up in Rondo, the Rondo neighborhood, right on Carroll and Victoria. So Brooks was at one end of the block, the VFW was at the other end of the block, and that's like where the Rondo Commemorative Plaza stands right now. So I grew up at the end of that block.
Okay.
And my grandmother lived right across the street. That's where my mom grew up. So like we were very stationed in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And Maxfield was right down the block, and that's where I went to school.
Wow.
And that's where I was really opened up, because like my mom was a musician, but she was also a young mom, and you know, you just sometimes you don't end up doing what it is that you want to do because
life happens.
Other responsibilities.
Yeah.
So you know, she was very encouraging with me and my brother, to do music, to be artists, and to celebrate the creativity that we had in our house and stuff. So it was very much encouraged. And when I got to Maxfield, I joined choir and did my very first like professional production with Mary Haffner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was so cool because like Mary Haffner, she was the music teacher at Maxfield, but she was also one of the musical directors at Pilgrim Baptist Church.
Where we've been.
Yeah, that's fun.
You know how historical that is. Yeah,
shout out
so
to him.
You know, that was my mom's church home. You know, so that was that whole connection. It was like the people that were teaching us taught my mom or worked with my mom. You know, because she was a school teacher at Maxfield as well. So you know, it was like I had this wonderful community of people around me. My brother being 11 years older than me, he was already working with Jan Mandel and Mary Clinton. May he rest in peace, because he just passed away.
Right.
But he was working with Mary Clinton, you know, as like 16, 17, 18 years old. You know, and he was part of Central Touring Theater. And then he started working with Penumbra. And so because he was working with Penumbra Theater, you know, I started coming around, and I went to preschool there, you know what I'm saying? I went to preschool at the same building that Penumbra's in. So it was like I was always there. It was a part of my whole entire life. And I even started working there at Penumbra when I was a teenager, that whole thing. So then I was raised up by all these wonderful people, T. Michael Rambo, Dennis Spears, Regina Marie Williams, you know, like all the greats, Greta Oglesby, you know what I mean? Like anybody who's anybody, Austin Van, like Jim Craven, gosh, just everybody, Benny Cannon, the Steels, like all these people formed me and shaped me by either watching them or by them actually taking a vested interest in me.
And these are all people that had a direct connection to the Rondo community.
Yep. And my mother.
Yeah.
And my
yeah, of
uncle,
course.
because my uncle played in Purple Haze, the group that Sunny Night was in, which
Yeah.
was like crazy because I ended up being Sunny Night's background singer. And didn't even know Sonny in that way. And then, I told him who my uncle was, and he was like, I loved your mom. She was my favorite, and like found out that him and my brother are family, they're connected by blood, and, just that whole thing. It's just, my whole life is these constant full circles.
Yeah.
Everything comes back to, okay, this all makes sense, and I can remember, like why I've gone this particular route and why my path has gone down this way. Every time I get to these particular places, I go, okay, now I know. I know what I was prepped for. I was prepped for that. This is why. This is why this is happening,
Yeah.
And it's because the same people have been around me my entire life. It's like I've been fostered by these people, and then they're also helping me continue as a mid-career artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even just by the support, by coming to my shows, by the nice little notes they leave me in my inbox, and, just the encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as much as we talk about Rondo connections, it was the, sort of disconnecting of that community that has a lot of people talking about it. And, it's the reason why I know what the Rondo community is. For folks who don't know, could you refresh us on what happened to Rondo as far as splitting the community apart?
Yeah. Rondo was a thriving community that was full of Black businesses, Black homeowners, and just community and network. And then I want to say it's like, let's see, my mom was 11, so 1965. They proposed that freeway. It was supposed to go through Pierce Butler, I heard, but then they decided to put it through the Rondo neighborhood. And that's, the whole idea of 94. And, it was like that time where clover leaves and cul-de-sacs, so it was that whole time where they were building and doing all that kind of stuff. And they put the freeway right through the neighborhood and split it apart. And, split it at Concordia and at St. Anthony. So, which is Old Rondo now and stuff like that. But they put it all the way through the community, and it turned it into, two different areas. And, we had to figure out how we could stay closer together and make, have it, throughout all of it, build community and still remain in community and not be split in that whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 1965, the height of the civil rights movement. I think the Voting Rights Act happened in 1965.
Yep.
Again, things that make it through the Black History Month curriculums, but learning about the Rondo community is just something that, doesn't make it through. And Scott, in I think in a previous Opus Triloquy, you talked about the differences in which the that highway and maybe 35 is different. How, the speed limit is one thing over here.
Right.
So we maintain this community and make sure that, they're safe and aren't disrupted. But over on 94, the highway that split Rondo is a completely different story.
That was when Devon Gray was in. I think that's like Opus 7 or 8 or something like that. And it's a big deal. And that's where, sometimes these protests where they were shutting the interstates down migrated over to Interstate 35, as a gesture of this inequity. Yeah,
and as much as it might be a quote unquote inconvenience for the people who are caught up in those protests, Pavi, as you can speak to, it's more than just an inconvenience for your community to be ripped apart.
Absolutely. And y'all will be all right. It's just like an hour of traffic. Y'all be cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, I think people just get mad at the truth of it. You know, I mean, you're not mad at the inconvenience of it. You're just mad because you just kind of want people to pipe down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It is what it is. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be, and people have a right to, as taxpayers, I always say, like, we got a right to say what we need to say.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. And what big change has come about without someone being, again, inconvenienced a little bit. I'm sure the Revolutionary War was inconvenient for someone. The Civil War.
Civil War, okay.
Yeah, could you hear them grousing about War.
Yeah.
You can hear it now. Dang blasted carpetbaggers. You know.
So in the description of this episode, I'm gonna put a link to a TPT, the local public television station's feature about your collaboration with the SBCO, and that feature actually starts in the Rondo community. You show us your grandmother's house where your mother grew up. Do you go back there often? Is it an experience for you to go back on that lawn that your grandma didn't want any of the kids on?
Yeah.
By the way?
I'm sympathetic. I'm sympathetic.
My nana was a master gardener. You know what I'm saying? Master gardener.
Yeah,
she was the kind of person that would like decorate bowling balls and put them on sticks. And,
okay.
You know, have that kind of thing. Have the white. You know what's that? It's a certain kind of material. It's those white benches.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's not cement, but you know what they are. Porcelain. Not
is it porcelain? But I know what you're
what
talking
I'm
about.
talking about.
Yeah.
The white benches and the chairs and stuff, and she keep them. She'd be out there spackling them and
Yeah.
making sure they still right. She did not play about her gardens. My mom didn't either. They were very much about the land, but they come. You know, my grandmother came from Mississippi, and they had land, and you know that kind of thing. They were raised with that, and they were preachers' kids. So you know, they had that kind of upbringing, and so my grandma always kept that connection to the earth, and we had to do that too.
Yeah.
But I do. I went back yesterday. I went.
Okay.
And just to go see, I usually go through there and tip through there because it was 853 Carroll was our house, and then 852 Carroll was my grandmother's, and then 853 Marshall was the last house that we had moved. That's where my mom bought her house and stuff like that. So it was literally in a 3-block radius was where I lived in that area. We moved literally up the block.
you must walk through, you know, that group of houses and just hear the music that you grew up with, hear the songs that your mother sang,
and remember like seeing the people on the block and who all used to live there. Sometimes I can close my eyes and see people, you know, in their yards doing what they do. Yeah, I totally remember that. I spent a lot of time on my grandmother's porch, just people watching.
Yeah,
that was her thing. People watching. So I had to do that with her. You know what I mean? Like whatever she was doing, I was doing. If she was watching me, if my mom had to work or whatever, because sometimes my mom would work summer school and teach at summer school. So then I'd go, and if I wasn't doing a summer program, I'd go be with my grandmother.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember those days and just hearing the music. You know, because she liked a lot of blues and she liked a lot of church music and stuff like that. She had a piano in her crib and that kind of thing. She didn't play it, but I did. You know?
and of course your appreciation for community led to this collaboration with the SBCO. You know, the performance of A Requiem for Zula. You know, you talk about the church music and the blues and the jazz. How did you figure out a way for that to translate into a medium that most would consider classical outside of that blues and jazz that you grew up around?
I figured just because I had an orchestra, I could just say, okay, this is what it is.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah, because, you know, I'm writing pieces for orchestra, and I consider that classical. It's just black classical.
Yeah.
You know, it's just black classical, and it's got that sound. Because, like, I think of Isaac Hayes and Barry White. Those two... and James Brown, too, and Fela Kuti, really, but just in different kind of ways. They were the orchestrators of their pieces, and they put together these long, extended play, funky pieces with all these different instruments and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, then that's no different than Tchaikovsky for me. That's no different than even Big Band and Chick Webb and Duke Ellington. Like, I feel like this is all along the lines. If you get a whole bunch of musicians together, that's when it becomes that orchestra. That's when it becomes classical realm. It doesn't have to sound like the Prototype. It doesn't have to sound like Mozart and all that. You know what I mean? And I always think, as musicians, we evolve the craft, but that's one of the genres that I never really see evolve because people are still making new pieces to mimic what we used to hear. And so when you hear people do things out of the norm like that, you know, like especially with Barry White and Isaac Hayes were really doing because they had the strings and the bassoons and the oboes and all that kind of stuff. And to hear them doing like straight up funk, like on the same level as Parliament, on the same level as Earth, Wind and Fire, Tower of Power, you know, and, Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, like that whole thing, that evolves the craft and that evolves the art. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to just keep playing the same thing over and over.
I am Scott. I am grinning from ear to ear because this is a conversation that it probably sums up the podcast in general. Just the idea of classical music and what do we call it? I mean, you know, when I listen to Pavi talk about evolving the craft. You know, it's just it's something that we're missing. We're missing that mark in some way. I mean, what are your thoughts on the lack of evolution that we're seeing
in classical music, or
classical, quote unquote? You know,
quote unquote. Well, my bit is it doesn't seem like we're making a lot of room for the new composers, the living composers. We get all of these releases that are, again, all of the pieces that we have a dozen other recordings of it already. I don't know what it's contributing, and I think that this is just my opinion, but I don't know how far forward we go without giving some airtime to the people who are working now.
right?
So, and you know, I was listening to all those same bands that you were talking about, Barry White and Tower of Power and all that, and it was plush. You know, to me, it sounded no different than the classical albums that my parents had. It was just there was a vocalist out in front.
And again, if you like you mentioned Tower of Power, right now I'm thinking of a song called "Some Days Were Meant for Rain," and I'm thinking about the beautiful flute lines in that piece of music. You know, that symphonic sound is there, but classical music, as it is, just does not really accept that into the genre. But
It's crazy.
But it must have been very. You know, I almost hate to use this word validating, because classical music as we see it, black classical music, whatever phrase you want to use, does not need validation. But in a way, it must have been very validating for your perspective to be embraced by the Saint Paul Chamber Orchestra.
Yes, that part was really cool, just to know that they trusted me.
Yeah,
and for this to be my first time out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I'm used to writing music for bands. You know, I write music for just, keys, bass, drums, and percussion and background singers. You know, so to move my focus and put it on something like and play these instruments that I do not play, that they hooked me up with a mentor, which was so cool. His name is Lembit Beecher, and he was actually the composer in residence when I started working with them. So I got to sit down with him, and he was like, "Oh, this is great. This is wonderful," And then like sometimes he'd be like, "The violin doesn't go that high."
Okay.
Or, and it's those things that I had to learn. And so then I started studying him and, talking to him about, okay, what's the range here? What's these things? And reading and looking these things up so I can know what I'm working with and how to work it, because I'm playing it all MIDI. I'm playing it all into GarageBand, and then it scores it on its own. I don't do any of that. And they had Michi Wianko come in and help orchestrate the piece and stuff, because there were some places where it was like, okay, I need a solo here, or I want this to sound like this. And I would just tell her verbatim what it was that I wanted and stuff like that. Because I feel like you can do that too as a composer. You're still writing your piece. It's still the things that are inside your head. But if you don't have the tools, you can ask for help. And so now I can seriously orchestrate my own pieces because of the things that I've learned. And now it's different, like even the sound and how I've evolved from the first piece to a piece that I'm writing right now. It's insane, and it's totally different.
Yeah,
because of what I've learned from the process.
Yeah. Do you feel like you mentioned like instrument ranges? Do you see limitations of the instruments as a limitation? Do you feel limited or in a box when it comes to scoring for orchestra?
No, I think that everything. I liked that it challenged me to be like, okay, you got to have a different sound. Like sometimes, if like I had a flute and a piccolo, you know what I mean? So I would be able to, go back and forth from that and be able to transpose these, sounds and make something higher or whatever. So I had like options and stuff. Or if, I didn't like how this clarinet sound, then I would try this oboe, and try it up in its upper range. And, it was about trying to put together what sounded good and how to make these things interweave so you can hear each instrument doing each thing. Yeah. So I think I had enough options and stuff. I didn't really feel limited. I kind of felt like free to do anything.
Yeah.
With that, because I have so many sounds and so many, different pieces. And with this piece I'm writing, I'm incorporating a trap set and keys and percussion, like African percussion, like djembes, and that kind of stuff. So it's just insane how it's like you're finally doing what you really want to do. Like this is what I really, really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. is the right music at this magnitude, be able to take all the disciplines that I do, because it's like I have all these different things being a theater kid like that, and I want to be able to put them all into one thing and manifest these shows like that, so they're kind of like operas, but they're not,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
Because it's like I'm singing in them, but I'm playing in them, and it takes storytelling, it takes acting, it takes timing, and these things are very well thought out. And I think this is like the best thing. This is my niche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be inspirational for somebody to hear that they can do something like this with something that's readily available, like GarageBand, or something that they can do something this big. And before Garrett came in, we were talking a little bit about the process that you went through with the Saint Paul Chamber Orchestra, the help and everything like that. What are you taking forward into this piece that you're working on now from that first experience?
Everything, like just everything that I learned in spacing, timing, like how I mesh myself and weave myself into these pieces too. This one I'm playing a little bit more because I wanted to play a little more, like I spent the whole time in the last piece singing for the most part, but there are some things that I feel like I want to articulate through music. And there's some feelings of the piece that I can only articulate through something instrumental. So everything that I learned doing, working with Limbit and working with Michi and placing things and space for little flute, little trills and little pretty stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How'd that flute go again?
Don't make me do it again.
I'm just joking with you.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like just being very intentional.
Yeah.
With what it is that I'm writing, and it's not just a piece of music, but it really means something. Where if I had absolutely zero lyrics in the piece, it would tell the same exact story.
Right.
Because I'm really on the fence about singing in this piece.
Yeah.
I'm really, really on the fence. I don't know. And I said I would, but I'm just like, sometimes it goes so hard just to listen to it. And it's like, I don't want to sing on it. I just want to hear that.
Watching that video from Minnesota Originals, and they showed a little excerpt from the performance and everything. Now, Garrett, we're always talking about the rules, the corners, the lines you have to stay inside with this music. And at the end, you actually got to hold for a minute to kind of get yourself together and then finish the line and finish the piece. Can you?
Because I lost it.
Yeah, talk about that moment, because such authenticity you don't see on stage very often.
I lost it. I blacked out several times during that piece, that whole piece.
Yeah.
Like there's pieces that I remember it in pieces, and I have an elephant memory, and it's so crazy. Usually I remember everything, but there are some times where I was flying so high.
Wow.
So high. Like I was just in another world. And it was like, I knew the people were there. I knew everybody was there with me. I felt really, really safe. You know what I mean? Like I felt really, really safe. It was amazing. And I could hear everything.
Yeah.
I could hear things that people were saying in the audience. I could hear tears. I could hear family. And so I remember it in pieces, but I know when I got to the end, I was very much there. And like, I think it's like the last 4 bars, I remember going, this is it, man. Like, it's just, I shake, I get chills thinking about it, seriously, because it was like them last 4 bars, I was like, you take it home. And I kind of just looked up, and then everything, I lost it. Like I was with my mom.
Yeah.
I really honestly think I was with my mom for a hot minute.
And as I don't have to tell you, that moment is so much bigger than that moment, so much bigger than you or the orchestra. It's the idea of, again, breaking down what seems like a big barrier between people and an organization like the SPCO, classical music, just opening that space up. In the prelude to this opus, Scott and I kind of talk about one of Issa Rae's infamous quotes, "I'm rooting for everybody black."
Yep.
And that is, that's what brought me to that concert. That's, I'm always keeping an eye out when there is blackness being represented in classical music here locally and, across the nation. And as I mentioned earlier, the sounds on the stage were different than is typical, but also the look of the audience. That audience looked very colorful.
Oh, yeah.
Much more colorful than usual.
Oh, yeah.
What can you say to the importance of giving Black folks the opportunity to root for everybody Black, to root for somebody Black when it comes to classical music or what orchestras put out there and present for audiences?
Oh, yeah. Well, SPCO and I, we talked about everything, as far as marketing was concerned. Who do you want to market to? And I was like, who I want to market to. And I want to make sure that my people are there in celebration, because this is our story.
Yeah.
It's my mom's story, but this is our story. Everybody comes from that, that same kind of story, those humble beginnings and rondo like that. And these are the people. I mean, we see everybody in this way, you know what I mean? So I wanted them to be there. And, they made sure that kids were free. And it was like kids to 18, like for real. Like,
oh, okay.
Everybody was free. Okay. And then they made sure that they had heavy discounted tickets and stuff like that, so that people could afford it. You know what I mean? And so that it made people feel like, yeah, this is feasible. We don't have to spend $60 a pop to come see somebody that we know and that we love and that we enjoy her work. And you know what I mean? Like we made it very accessible for the neighborhood to be there. And there is a TC Ben. It's like the Twin Cities. I can't remember the full acronym, but it's like TC Ben. It's the Black, I want to say entrepreneurial network and the business people network. They held a mixer at the spot at the orchestra, during one of my nights. I think it was like Friday night, and I came down. They were like, can you come and meet the people and stuff? And it was so cool just to meet a whole bunch of sisters and brothers that I've never met before that are down there for me. It was just like, whoa, this is a trip. And you done made a night, and I handed out free tickets to folks so that they could come. And I mean, they just went all out.
Yeah.
They went all out. And it was like, not only, I guess it just goes to show when businesses do this kind of thing, other people want to do this kind of thing too. And it became this real community thing, where it's like, I got hit up by Insight, I got hit up by Spokesman Recorder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like this became a community thing, where people were talking about it and making sure that people knew to come out to the Ordway to celebrate Rondo and to celebrate where we come from and us.
Yeah. Now, it's one thing for, an orchestra or another institution to really big you up and use their platform for that. But the unfortunate truth is a lot of these organizations do that in an effort to pat themselves on the back or to say the community, look, we're being diverse. We're doing X, Y, and Z. Where do you draw the line between collaboration and tokenization?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I draw all those lines all the time. I will walk out of anything, and I have been known to do that.
But don't walk out of here, please.
Oh, of course not. But, it's about your dignity and your integrity as an artist. And it's like, you can't start doing that, because once you start doing that, then they'll always pay you for that. And that's not what I want for my legacy. For me, it's like, SPCO and I collaborated, and this was real, down to the point where, when I first met the it was on the TPT documentary too. When I first met the orchestra and some of the members and stuff, and when that one lady was like, "It's about time."
Yeah,
I think they collectively feel that way. I think that and they put their money where their mouth is with all the different programming and the different ways that they're trying to reach out and get music in these clubs and get music in these different places that are it's uncanny. It's not where orchestras are. They're taking them out of the Ordway and putting them in Turf Club or putting them in Ice House or going and doing different things and reaching out to people and saying, we want to work with you, we want to work with North, we want to do this, and I see like people that I grew up under their tutelage working with SPCO, so I know that they are doing a good job reaching out and being real and being authentic in that, as they can be, being a corporation and stuff like that, and having to move around corporation rules and all these kind of different things, that these systems that we work and live in. I think they do a good job navigating that to get to the real people and to be able to shine a light on people that should have a light shine on them in that way. You know what I mean? Like, I think that they do a pretty good job. I can't say that for every institution here.
That was my next question for you. And not that you have to name anyone.
Yeah. But definitely, I really have respect for Saint Paul Chamber Orchestra and for how much they have invested in me, trust and the ability to do what it is that I really want to do, and I don't have a whole bunch of limitations and rules that I have to work around. I can just come in there and be me. I can wear DCs on the stage. You know what I mean?
You looked fly at that concert, by the way.
It was all planned. I was like, I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna be me to the fullest. We're gonna walk out here. I'm not gonna, adhere to those rules and, come out here with the high heels and the long
black
gowns. Yeah. I could, and I did. I had 3 different outfits and stuff, but they just all specifically made statements in that way. Like, this is what I am, who I am, and you can't negate this piece if you tried. Like, there was even people, I remember we had a talk back before. It was like this, a talk with the artist thing. Yeah. And there was this one guy in the audience that just really couldn't get over the fact that I didn't score this music.
Oh, what's his name? Let's drag him.
I can't even remember. I know he was like a guy that was just there, and it was just like, he was like, well, I just don't understand, and it just made it seem like, some people aren't going to acknowledge what it is that I do. But once they heard the piece, what can you say? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how it gets done or what's the means to the end. It's the end product, right, in this case.
Right.
And I think that, SPCO has my back in that way where I can do something like that and it be translated to their language, and then we can all speak this together.
Right.
Yeah.
As New York from Flavor of Love said, look at the material.
Okay.
Look at the material. It's right here. This is classical music.
Mm-hmm. And it is.
And furthermore, and a point that's made in the video, again, the link in the description to this, a point that's made there is that so many of the SPCO musicians are transplants. I'm a transplant. Scott is a transplant. You grew up in Saint Paul. This is your city, and that is your orchestra, and you should be represented in that institution.
Absolutely. Yep. And also have an opportunity to work in these realms because the music is professional and because the music is at that level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I should be able to ascend in this realm without having all these things, these ceilings and things be in my way.
Yeah.
Like, I really feel like, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people can get upset about it or feel like I'm not a real musician in that way or whatever these feelings people have. But I'm going to do what it is that I want to do regardless of people, down in it. Because like I said, at the end, I'm bit by this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think it's time, and I just don't want to be held by these things that are over us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even in like making the art and whatnot, I just don't want to adhere to these things and make people think that things that are supreme,
right?
Because they're not.
And let's keep it real. When you talk about these ceilings and these barriers, they're barriers that were created in some cases against folks that look like us, and in other cases built maybe, non-offensively, but still without our perspectives and our experiences in mind. So I really think it's up to us, to
crash through.
To crash through and to be our authentic selves everywhere we are, just to normalize who we are, not just in the arts, not just in music, but across the board.
You bring up a good point that the Saint Paul Orchestra is PaviElle's home band. They should be doing this sort of thing. Now, about as trill as I can get is my next question. Some of the guests that we've had on recently have indicated that they did not feel the support that they needed from Minnesota Public Radio, American Public Media. And I was surprised. So I want to get your perspective. Where are our blind spots? I mean, do you feel like you have the support of Minnesota Public Radio and American Public Media? Do you feel comfortable here?
I do feel comfortable here. I think it's because of my relationships that I fostered through time, because I've been working with the current since I put out my album, and I think I put out my album in 2014.
Okay, yeah. So
like
shout
that.
out to our brothers and sisters at the current. Yeah.
Yes. So I've been coming over here since then, and I have met so many different folks and have always been embraced and have always been looked out for, and they've even done the same in many ways with like SPCO has done, where they trust me and they understand that I have a vision, I have a strategic vision, and I'm not going to waver from it. And when I say we should do this because I know. And I've always felt like they've had my back on that because, they gave me the opportunity to do like a show at the Fitzgerald, top billing that show, and so. And so many opportunities, the 10th anniversary of the current, like I've been a part of so many things here. So I really feel like I've been fostered. At the same time, I think that it's more than just me.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to always bring other folks in and try to connect with other brown folks and stuff that are working with the current and stuff like that. It's how I've met a lot of the other singers around here and stuff. And I've tried to, like hip folks to who the people are and who's out here and who these artists are and stuff like that. Like I remember I got a chance to take over for Andrea Swinson when she had the artist takeover for that week and stuff. And I brought everybody that I came up with that I could. I tried to reach out to everybody and say, hand me your tracks.
Yeah.
Because we're going to play them on the current.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about you. Give me all your information. Let's do that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of person I am. I'm like, I will do what I can do on my feet. Like wherever I'm at and whatever places I get into that not necessarily made for us or wasn't made for us in mind, I'm in here now. So who can I bring? What can I do? Who can I open you up to? That also needs this kind of support as an artist, as a local artist here in Minnesota.
Right.
I'll do it myself.
As the great Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter said, I might get your song put on the radio station.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, that's real.
Yeah, it is.
That's what I feel like to do with my platform. Like for many years, I was that artist that was like always politicized, always writing stuff about like white supremacy and all these things. And then I realized it felt like people were liking it a little too much. Audiences were liking it a little too much. And that became a little too much to me, to have to perform this pain, this plight.
Ooh, yes.
And then people enjoy it and go back home and watch Netflix, where I've got to come down at the end of this and be in this work, and then also be outside of myself thinking about what I just did and how does that help me forward. And so I figured I need to do something different as a political activist and as an artist, and using my platform. And it's going to look different for everybody. Some people are going to speak. Some people are going to say stuff. Some people are going to do stuff, behind the scenes and stuff. And I'm more that kind of person because I've done all that. I wrote 2 one-woman shows about gentrification, all the things that we've gone through, from slavery on. I've talked about that. And so I just don't want to. I feel like I'm a high believer in like there's power in the of life and death in the tongue. You know what I mean? I feel like we manifest what it is that we say. And so my new way at being a political artist is to do for mine and do for ours in these places. And that's where I gotta be. Because for me, I've spoken truth to power. I don't feel like it's as effective enough in my realm. I think there's other things for me to do that are effective. I also think that we do need the artists that do that speak. And but I've had, you have all your different phases in your artist career and stuff, and I've had that phase. But I need, younger artists to continue to do that, other artists to continue to speak truth to light. But I think that I don't want to speak these things and say, like I said, that that it's this white supremacy, because it is not supreme and it is not over me. And I have to figure out how I can carry that fearlessness and continue to make the work happen and continue to do the work in that way. I can't speak these things over my life anymore. I got to do something different and still have the understanding that I'm trying to liberate myself as well as my people in that liberation.
It's incredible that you went there because, in preparation for the interviews I do, I always just do reading about the guests and I write down what comes to mind. And right here in my journal, I wrote, an honest, genuine appreciation of self as a Black person is in itself protest. And for you to loop that into this,
Yes.
really again speaks to
Yes,
the
yes,
reality of being Black, not just as an artist, but period.
That's right.
But when you happen to venture the world of quote unquote classical music as a Black person or a person of color, there are very specific, as you said, there are very specific things that that sort of are over you in a de facto way, and how you have to traverse that, speaking your reality into truth and speaking your experience as normal.
Yes.
Wow, what oh, goodness gracious.
My hit out right now. It ain't no hit, but I just be telling people
I'm sure it's a hit.
But my newest song is it's me being me is revolutionary. And that is the song. And that's what I feel like. Y'all ain't gonna stop me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I understand that these things are here, but they're not here for me. And I feel like we as Black people, especially Black folks, everything that we do, everything that we create is what the juice is. And we have to wield our power. We have to find a way to wield the power to keep our juice in house and do what we need to do in this society to capitalize on our own as opposed to others capitalizing on that. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at in my mind. I think that it's not about playing the game, but it's about figuring out a way to have ownership of what it is that you create and what it is that you put forth in here, because everybody, it's like we put it out and it's taken, and what's ours is ours. And I think if we need to go inward in that way. I don't have any time to worry about the white folks and the things that, you know what I'm saying, the things that people are saying, and the things that these old rules, these old rules that have no application to what it is that I'm trying to do here. You know what I mean? That's power. It's about knowing your power. You know what I mean? And you watch Muhammad Ali, you watch anybody that was amazing back in that time. Odetta, my favorite, Ruby Dee, Ossie Davis. If you looked at any of those folks that were moving and shaking, Josephine Baker, Richard Wright, Nina, these people had it. They understood their power. And I want to apply that to my life as an artist. It's I'm not going to pimp my pain for y'all. That cuts into my integrity and into my my life force. You know what I mean? We deserve happy endings to our stories. We deserve beauty. We deserve joy. We deserve all of that. Being multi-layered people, even in our activism, we deserve these things and to have our own and to be able to know that it's ours. So that's what I'm pushing for. I'm not trying to operate in a house. You know what I mean? I'm trying to operate in my house at that level.
There's a soundbite right there.
I'm tearing up listening to you because it's just so true. You talk about pimping out the pain, and
it gets so hard.
It gets so hard, and it gets so tiring.
All these things, and it does get tiring because you go, okay, I'm not gonna sit up here and tell y'all that I'm a human being. Don't, because that just, it makes it exactly what we here for. It's the same feeling. I'm telling you to stop hurting me, but then I'm going to tell you what's hurting me, but then you going to gaslight me while I'm telling you what's hurting me.
Yeah. Oh.
No Q&As, because it's the work that needs to be done. I think, stop prolonging.
Yeah.
Stop prolonging. Go do the work. If you do the work, I will work with you. If you don't do the work, I'm not working with you because I have those options, you know. That's what I mean by like a strategic vision.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the job that I work, we are heavily into IDI, EDI work. We're heavily into culture change work,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it's in every facet of life that I'm working in. That's what we gonna do, because I'm not going to continue to sell myself in that way either. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And just say, okay, I'm the resident person that talks about Black people in any format, in every artistry format, in all these places. I'm just the person that they call. And it's like, what is that doing? Because that's no different than me being on stage and talking about my plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we gonna do, y'all?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all action.
Oh, I'm ready to get off the mic and go march. You know, and pulling this back around full circle, you know, we're talking about Black history and all of those stories that just go untold. You know, if you had the opportunity to put your mother's name and her story into the Black History Month ether, you know, as people learn, what would you want people to know about her? What would you want her, you know, her chapter in the textbook to say?
I would just want it to say that you can truly do anything. And I mean, you know what I mean? Like she really was that poster child for manifestation and knowing your light and knowing how to wield your power. Like it's just, you can come from anything and you can change your whole narrative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that was her. She changed her whole entire narrative. You know what I mean? Period.
Yeah.
And I really admire people like that. That's why I mentioned Muhammad Ali. He's that same kind of person. He changed his whole narrative. You know what I mean? As a Black man, he changed his whole narrative. And my mom did that. As a Black woman, she changed her whole narrative. What she came from, how she made it through that, the people that she affected along the way, the teaching of the community, of the people, because she raised up so many people's kids, being an educator, working at Inner City Youth League, being a Girl Scout leader, you know what I mean, being a garden. She was part of Selby Area Gardening Enthusiasts, which was called SAGE, and it was like her and Katie Royce, Metric Giles, and they had community garden plots. She's teaching people how to fish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how to get your own and how to survive on your own. She was the board president for Roundel Community Land Trust. She was helping Black women buy their homes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So she completely changed her whole narrative, stayed in her community the entire time, and did it.
Yeah.
To the day she died.
Yeah. And then, you know, how, you know, stories like those can branch out and touch people from so many backgrounds. You know, Scott, I was thinking about you a lot when I was listening in preparation for this to the Requiem for Zula, because like PaviElle, you lost your mother. And I'm sure thinking about that strikes a chord with you as well.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you about that final moment where you had the time to collect yourself and come back to the music and everything. I was in bits. I mean, I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you got it back together to finish.
The old adage, the show must go on. I hear like my theater teachers in my head, like, don't go up.
Yeah.
Like, I literally heard that.
I've heard that a lot.
Don't go up.
Yep.
And I was like, finish strong, girl. Finish strong. Because it was like, my voice was cracky. It was even hard to get Z out at the end.
Yeah.
It was all trembly.
Oh,
yeah. But it's just to be able to honor somebody like that in itself. I mean, if I died tomorrow, knock on wood that I don't, because, you know, I still got plenty of life. But I feel like I've accomplished what I came here for. I have so much more to do. And so the pathway is like a big circle is just opening up for me. It's not even a straight linear thing. It's a big quasar, you know, it's a big, huge thing. But I swear, like, out of all the things that I've won, all the things that I've ever done in my life, that was just unbelievable.
wow.
I didn't even know I could do that.
And we're forever indebted to you for the work and the dedication that you do in this regard. How can folks learn more about you, check out your music, and maybe even keep an eye out on the more classical things that you're getting into?
Sweet. Can I plug a show? Is it okay?
Plug everything.
So I have a show at the Schubert Club, and it's free. So I want people to come out because we're making music for the people, y'all. So we'll be at the Schubert Club February 13th. It's a Thursday. It's at noon, and it's for their courtroom concert series. So it'll be at the Landmark Center in a really cool courthouse.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And full circle again, I was in Stepping Stone Theater and as a kid, and back then it was at Landmark in Weyerhaeuser. So it's like, I just keep going back. Just, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. So we'll be doing that. And I have a panel discussion about women in music and like what we do, how we navigate. Because like I'm my own manager, artist, that I'm my own agent. I book and do all that kind of stuff. So it'll be me, Desdemona, Kathleen Johnson, and Andrea Swinson. So we're going to do a little panel discussion at Minnesota History Center. Yeah, because I made it into the First Ave exhibit. So that's part of that. I was like, okay, y'all got me on the other side of Lizzo. All right.
Yeah.
Easy on the other side. Okay.
Yep.
I loved it. So they can find me as PaviElle French or just PaviElle on Facebook. I have 2 pages. I tell everybody follow it. And then my IG is PaviElle_music. And my Twitter is Revolt in Uprise. And it's R3 VOLT in Uprise.
PaviElle French, it has been incredible having you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Wonderful. Thank y'all for having me anytime.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Scott, what were some of your big takeaways from our conversation with Pavi?
My takeaway is that PaviElle not once has drank pickle juice. Not one time.
Okay. The listeners don't know what you're talking about, but...
Well, who was it that you said, was it Lizzo that...
Okay, so I'll very quickly tell this story. So, in an interview years ago with Nicki Minaj,
there we are.
She said that she went to a photo shoot or something and went over to the hospitality area, and there were a few cheese cubes and a jar of sliced pickles and maybe some bottles of water. And she walked out because, long story short, she said she has to be respected to the utmost standard everywhere she goes. Otherwise, she's going to spend the rest of her life drinking pickle juice. And
I don't get the impression that PaviElle has ever done that. She said she'd walk right out if she didn't like the situation.
PaviElle is in control of her art, of what she puts into the world. She is the owner of it, and she has that sort of autonomy and that level of freedom, a level of freedom that I'm working toward for sure, and many other folks. So definitely check out PaviElle French's work. I have links to the public television special that airs here locally. Originals. Yeah, that's in the description. Also a link to her website. A very important woman of classical music and every other genre of music who I think will one day be lauded in the pages of Black history, and someone who will celebrate not just in February but every month of the year.
We'll bring the celebration back around to her in November when her next piece comes out with the Saint Paul Chamber Orchestra.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the next Opus of Triloquy, I'm chatting with another local composer. His name is Damian Strange. He wrote an opera about a woman that you don't usually hear about during Black History Month, the mother of Martin Luther King Jr. So Damian and I talk a little about her, how he ties community activism with the arts, his upbringing, what brought him to Minnesota. And we're also going to hear an excerpt from an opera he wrote about the mother of Martin Luther King Jr. called Mother Mary. So hope you'll tune in for that and lots more on the next Opus of Triloquy.
Like and subscribe, even leave a review about Triloquy if you like on triloquy.org.
And you remember you can also reach out to us by sending an email to triloquy@americanpublicmedia.org.